Hello, everyone, and welcome to How Bubble Builds Bubble for Scale, where our internal team of Bubble developers will share the best practices that they use to shape and manage an app that supports over 3 million users. Hint, it's our bubble.io site. So I'm Nick, your host. I'm a product manager on our editor and mobile teams here at Bubble. I've been on the team for close to 3 years now and joined when I realized how much of a cheat code Bubble is for anyone that's looking to build a software product, and also the amount of time and money it would have saved me back when I was building my first startup in 2016. But enough about me. Let's welcome the real stars of the show to this stage, Andrew, Maria, and Sam.
Hey everyone, my name's Maria. I'm a Bubble development manager. I've been on the team for about 2 years, and our team works on the main site, so everything that you see on bubble.io except for the editor. I've been bubbling full time since 2017 when I joined the AirDev team, and during my time there, I helped grow the company from a small in-house agency to the partner model that they use today.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrew, a senior Bubble developer here at Bubble. In January, I will have been on the team for 3 years, and I stumbled on Bubble building a custom app for my family's small business. And honestly was just blown away by what I was able to build with Bubble, despite having absolutely no idea how to code. And the rest has been history. I'm now part of the product team, and specifically the team of Bubble developers that is responsible for Bubble.io.
Hey everybody, I'm Sam, a Bubble developer on the team. I've been here just under 2 years now. Very similar to Andrew, I first discovered Bubble building an app for my own music business and very quickly became as obsessed with the platform itself as I was with the specific app idea I had. So after spending a year helping other entrepreneurs learn how to use Bubble, I now work on the product team here with both Maria and Andrew, helping to build and maintain Bubble.io.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew, Maria, and Sam. Very excited to be co-hosting this session with you all today. I am always in awe about what your team puts out, so I'm really excited that we can share a bit of that with the audience today. So we have a very exciting session planned for you all. First, we're going to get into what building modular means and why it's important. Next, we'll run through a few of the features that Bubble offers natively to help you build in a modular fashion. Most importantly, we're going to cover examples from our team, Andrew, Maria, and Sam, about how they incorporate these into bubble.io today. And finally, we'll wrap the session with a Q&A. So if you do have any questions for Andrew, Maria, and Sam, please drop those in the chat throughout the session, and then we will get to them in the end. So what is building modular? Well, building modular is breaking your app into small reusable parts that can be used and referenced independently. A custom event that both opens a pop-up and focuses on an input inside that pop-up is a great example of breaking out some core logic into a separate block that can then be called throughout your app. Okay, I know what building modular, Nick, means, but why is that important? Well, I'm glad you asked. So in short, building modular is how we at Bubble build Bubble for scale. As your app grows, it's going to get more complex. You're going to spend more time building out new features or maintaining existing features than you will have building that product in the first place. Not only is your app going to grow, but your team is going to grow too. You're going to hire more Bubble developers. You're going to be adding on new functions like marketing and success and sales and data, et cetera. And all of this leads to extra complexity. It could also lead to higher risk of bugs or just generally slow things down. Especially since when you were building the initial version of your product, you probably were building more so in the name of speed than you were for scale. But by investing in building in a modular fashion, you'll be able to embrace that growth because you will have a more organized, maintainable, and scalable application. It's important to remember that building on Bubble is just as much software development as coding is, right? And there are principles and concepts that have been honed for decades in that traditional coding world that we as Bubble developers can leverage to build better applications. So one of these core concepts is this idea of dry or don't repeat yourself. Basically, as you're building your app, if you find yourself wanting to copy and paste something, once or twice, you should probably think about how you can break that out into something reusable so you don't fall into that trap. Now, why stay dry? Well, there are a few key reasons. One, your app is going to be more maintainable. There's less of a risk that updating something somewhere is going to break something else. You're going to have faster iteration cycles. You're going to be reusing stuff that you've built rather than having to build everything from scratch. And finally, you're going to have greater consistency and reliability because when you make an update, it's going to update everywhere it's used, making sure you keep that integrity throughout your app. So thankfully, Bubble offers a lot of awesome features native to our editor that help you build in a more scalable fashion. The first is reusable elements. The name pretty much says it all. Reusable elements are blocks of UI and logic that can be used anywhere throughout your app. And now that we have properties on them, they are more flexible and context aware than they were before. Custom events with properties are another foundational feature in terms of building for scale. Custom events are these smaller reusable bits of logic that are also context aware and can be repeated throughout your page. Next are backend workflows. Backend workflows are workflows that can be called anywhere throughout your app or via an API call. These also run asynchronously in the background, so they're really nicely used when you have situations like a user signs up and you need to perform a bunch of actions in the background, like sending a welcome email and making changes to your database. Option sets are a small but powerful tool that you have at your disposal. Option sets are lists that can be used as a data source throughout your application, and they have one-to-one mapping, which means if you change the name or a property of an option set, it will update everywhere else it's used. And finally, even designing your application can be done so in a modular manner. Use styles and style variables to create a consistent look and feel throughout your app, and also update that look and feel with the click of a button. So cool, we've covered what building modular means, why it's important. We've touched on some cool features that Bubble offers that allow us to build modularly, but let's see it in practice. So I'd love to welcome Maria to the stage to kick things off about how our internal Bubble development team puts what we've covered today into good use. Hey, Maria.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. So before I dive in, I just wanted to say that we'll cover 3 examples today. They're going to vary, so some will be better for beginners and others will be better for intermediate and advanced bubblers. Regardless of the example, we've tried to boil each one down into its most basic form, just so that we can cover everything in a short 30-minute session. All right, let's jump in. So as your company matures, you might start collecting testimonials from your users, which are then super valuable assets to show on your website. So at Bubble, we have carousels of these testimonials that you can see here, like on our careers and immerse pages. And then on the admin side, as your team grows, it's super important to empower your non-technical teammates in particular to be able to manage content like the testimonials. So at Bubble, we've built an admin page that does exactly that. So I'm going to show a short video walking you through a demo app that we've built specifically for this session. Keep in mind the app is not fully functional. It's just meant to demonstrate the core concepts of what we're covering today. We'll share out the link to the editor, which you can see on your screen here. So feel free to click on it, check it out in more detail, and really dive in after the session is over. So without further ado, here's the video.
Welcome to the demo app. The first thing I want to talk about is this testimonial reusable element. We use the same carousel in a bunch of places on our website, so of course we've built it as a reusable to keep it modular. Our app has a data type called testimonial that stores fields like the image, the quote, and the author. The reusable has a property which stores a list of testimonials, and these are the ones that are visible in any given instance of the carousel. We have a single cell repeating group here, and the left and right arrows use the really handy show next and show previous repeating group actions to navigate between them. It's not shown in our demo app, but you could also use reusable properties to change up the colors to make the same reusable work on different backgrounds. For example, I could make this dark blue a white color and the font a dark blue color to maintain the contrast that we need. And then in order to allow our non-Bubble developer teammates to add, edit, and delete testimonials, we have an admin page that allows our users to manipulate the testimonial data records. Editing the record on this admin page is then reflected on the live page as a result. So this is a highly simplified example of how you can use reusables, reusable properties, and admin functionality to manage content on your marketing pages, but the same concept can really be applied at scale and in more complex situations. So for example, at scale, Bubble's admin functionality covers dozens of areas like the FAQs, the support articles, Bubble team members, and Academy video resources that you see on our website. A more complex example of a reusable element is the new application form, which you can see in action anytime you create a new app. It's an extremely powerful reusable that handles trial creation, onboarding flows, and even experimentation, which is something we'll get into more detail later on. Next up, I'll pass it off to Andrew, who will dive into more detail about the admin page, specifically about how we approach data creation and editing.
Thanks, Maria. Hey, everybody. So as you build in Bubble, it can be really tempting to copy and paste logic wherever it's needed throughout your app. Especially if you're new to Bubble or you're learning your way around, this can feel like a faster way of building. But at scale, as your app grows in complexity, or maybe there's more team members that are added and having to make edits in your app, this can actually make it a lot more difficult to maintain and can lead to inconsistent data as a result. In general, centralizing and reusing existing logic leads to more organized and maintainable apps and better data integrity. One way we do this at Bubble is through the content admin system that Maria just mentioned a second ago, and through the custom events and reusable elements specifically that power the admin system. So rather than having different workflows for creating and editing records, we've consolidated down to a centralized set of logic that can be reused whenever necessary. This makes the system much easier to understand and maintain over time. And specifically in our demo app, we've built a simplified version of this using a reusable pop-up that you see on the screen. And it can both create and update testimonials using custom events and the reusable pop-up itself. Here's a quick video to walk you through how it's built.
Now that you've seen the front end of our testimonial demo, I'd like to walk you through the back end and specifically how we're applying the concept of dry to testimonial management across the site. Keep in mind our demo app is definitely a simplified example of what dry looks like, but these concepts can be applied in your app across a wide variety of use cases and complexity. To handle both creating and updating testimonials, we're using this reusable pop-up. To make sure it's always initialized for creating or updating, we use an open pop-up custom event with a testimonial parameter that's set to optional. This workflow can be triggered from anywhere the pop-up appears, which helps to ensure that all pertinent actions run anytime the pop-up is used. This cuts down on having to build redundant workflows anywhere the pop-up appears and means our team doesn't have to remember what actions are important each time the pop-up is used. To handle actually creating or updating records, we use one workflow that's built to accommodate both situations. When the pop-up's value is empty, we create a new testimonial, but you'll notice we don't actually set any of its fields. Instead, we have a second action built to update either the pop-up's testimonial or the record that was just created. The benefit is that all pertinent field data is set in one place. So if we have to make changes down the road, this simplifies the updates, which ultimately helps to protect our data integrity and consistency. So these are two quick and simple examples of dry in practice. Make sure you save the link to our demo app so you can take a closer look when you have a moment. And now I'm excited to pass it to Sam to walk you through how we use experimentation to help inform what we build across the app.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Hey, everybody. So as your user base grows, optimizing different user flows in your product is crucial to achieving your goals. At Bubble, we spend a ton of time trying out different UIs, particularly related to our user onboarding flow. And that helps to sort of reduce friction and help new users get to value as quickly as possible. Experimentation or A/B testing is one of the best ways to figure out the best possible user experience. So by accurately tracking user behavior across these different experiences that we roll out, we can feel confident that whatever experience we decide to roll out on a permanent basis is definitely the best option. The key to this is modular logic, because even if we have separate UIs for different user onboarding flows, they're often triggering the same set of logic. In our case, with user signup, it's the act of creating a new application and taking them to the editor. So you can see here 2 different examples of a new user onboarding experience on bubble.io. The bottom example is one that you're probably familiar with. This was our create your first app screen for a long time. You can see above that an iteration that we decided to try. We had a hypothesis that the act of naming your first application was actually much more overwhelming than it may seem as a brand new user. And we also know that the sooner a user gets into their editor and starts exploring, the sooner they can see the true value of Bubble. So as an experiment, we wanted to roll out the top screen to see how users would behave if we just allowed them to click a button and enter their editor, while we take care of the app naming process behind the scenes. The key here is that both of these experiences use the exact same set of logic. Regardless of which button you click, they're going to trigger the same app creation flow. So what I want to do next is take a look at a simplified version of the same concept in our demo app. Instead of the new app creation flow, we're going to look at an experiment with just 2 different sign up buttons. Once again, the link to this app is being shared on your screen, so feel free to poke around in the editor and in run mode afterwards to check everything out in detail. Dive in and take a look at a simplified version of a user onboarding experiment inside of our demo app. While running an experiment inside of your app does require building out 2 completely different experiences to test, there are still some techniques that you can use to adhere to the principles of dry. Here, we see 2 different variants of a sign-up CTA. The first one is a bit more plain in design, but it allows room for the sign-up button itself to be positioned right next to the testimonial. The other variation is much more vibrant and includes room for the testimonial author's photo, but that means that the sign-up button needs to be pushed further down the page. Let's see what this setup looks like inside of our editor. You can see here that we have both UI experiences inside of the same reusable element, and their visibility is controlled by a field on the user called Experiment Groups. When a user first loads the page, we randomly assign them to one of the experiment groups. If they're assigned Control, they'll see the UI with a sign-up button positioned next to the testimonials. But if they're assigned the Variant group, they'll see the more vibrant UI with the testimonial author's photo and the sign-up CTA pushed further down the page. To determine whether a user gets Control or Variant, we use industry-standard third-party tools like Amplitude and Segment to run and analyze all of our experiments. These third-party tools handle all of the logic for assigning a user to a particular group, and we simply store that value on the user record in Bubble. All of the logic for the sign-up CTA lives inside of a custom event within the reusable called CTA signup. This ensures that we can call this custom event from either UI experience, and the logic will remain the same. It also means if we ever want to update the logic, we only have to do it in one place, and all versions of the UI will instantly have the correct updated logic. Storing the logic inside of a custom event also means that it can be called from anywhere, including outside of the reusable element. For our control experience, since the sign-up button is inside of the reusable, we simply use the trigger a custom event workflow action. For our variant experience, the button actually lives on the page rather than inside of the reusable element. Here, we can use the trigger a custom event from a reusable element workflow action to still trigger the CTA signup workflow from the testimonials reusable. I hope this demo helps demonstrate how we use reusable elements and custom event logic to create multiple different UI experiences without violating the principles of dry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam, Andrew, and Maria. That was really cool. Quick virtual round of applause for them. So we covered a lot of awesome stuff in this session so far, and I want to just touch on a few things that we hope you take away from this session with us. The first is building modular and why we build modular in the first place. In short, you build modular to build for scale. And this really comes from this idea of don't repeat yourself or dry. It is way better to build once and reuse than it is to copy and paste or build from scratch each time. We saw a really cool example of how our team breaks down key user flows into reusable chunks so that they can experiment and find the best path forward, all while maintaining that crucial data integrity. And finally, that there are plenty of awesome features native to our Bubble editor today that help you build in a more scalable and maintainable fashion. So with that, would love to transition over and have Andrew, Maria, and Sam address any questions that came up during the chat. So first question, thank you so much. What about object-oriented programming logic? I mean, being able to create workflows linked to data types. We'll let you all read the rest of that. This is a really great question, and I would love to pass this off to Maria to address.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So first of all, I'll say that on the engineering side, we are looking to invest more heavily in this area in the future. But in the meantime, you have a couple options. So the first one is using a backend workflow if you can make it async. If not, we would recommend creating basically an invisible reusable element with a custom workflow that can take in as many parameters as you need and run any shared workflows that you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. And okay, another question here. What is the best way to run a scalable A/B test in Bubble without a third-party integration? Sam, since you just covered a little bit about how we do experimentation in Bubble today, we'll pass this off to you.
Sure. So yeah, I mentioned in my video that we do use third-party tools like Amplitude and Segment to run some of our experiments. That's mainly for their analyzation properties, but running the experiment itself doesn't require a third-party tool. Generally, how I would set this up is using an option set to store the values for the different groups that a user could be assigned to. So a typical A/B experiment would have what we call a control group and then a variant group. And so we'd have an option set with those values in them. And then generally, we would assign a user to a particular group at a particular point. Sometimes this might be when they first sign up. Other times this might be when they load a page for the first time. But you can set up a workflow that essentially attaches one of the option set values, a random item from the option set, to a field on the user. From there, we know what group that user is supposed to be in, and all of our UI can have conditionals to make it visible only if the user is in the appropriate group. So the conditional, for example, on the control UI, which in my experiment presentation would have been the new app form where you can name it, would say something like only when current user's group is control, then they would be able to see that experience. So that's the basics of it. And yeah, you can use an option set to store values on the user.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. All right, next question from Chris. So if we have a client-side custom workflow that we want to use throughout the app, but they aren't tied to specific UI, is there a way to do that? Andrew, what do you think? Is there a way to do this?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it. So reusable elements will be your friend for doing that for sure. So you can take custom events, put them in a reusable element, and then as we demonstrated, anywhere that reusable element appears on a page, inside of another reusable element, you can run a specific action, which is trigger a custom event from a reusable, and fire off whatever that workflow is. And if your custom event requires parameters or things like that, you still have the ability to pass data to all of those parameters. Typically, I think about this in two ways. The easiest thing is if you have a reusable, like a header or a footer that you know is going to appear on the majority of your pages, I typically will throw a reusable inside of that reusable to have it wherever I need it. Or sometimes you can just put those custom events directly inside of something like a header. If you need them to appear inside of other reusables, I'll sometimes make a reusable called utilities that specifically just has the actions I need wherever I need them. But the goal is to only build them once and reuse them wherever they're needed.
Awesome. So it sounds like even though reusable elements can support both UI and logic, you don't have to use the UI part. You can really take advantage of only the logic part.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. All right, another question here from Rob. When you first create a feature, how do you predict how modular that it will need to be and therefore create a different structure? Maria, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so if you're really not sure if something will need to be modular in the long run, the way I think about it is start simple, build it out, and then the second you find yourself hitting copy and paste, that should be a red flag to stop and think through it, and think about how to make it reusable and more modular. So that's sort of just having that built in to your brain as you're bubbling is a really helpful tool to stop you in your tracks and help you adjust from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. So it sounds like we can always go back and make something more modular. So we don't have to worry too much about doing all that thinking up front.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. And okay, Justin has a question here. How do you manage complex conditional expressions that are in multiple places of an app? Let's see, Sam, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah, so complex conditionals are tricky in Bubble. There's a couple things we do to make this easier. One, and probably the most common one that we use, is using arbitrary text. It kind of allows us to dive in and edit different parts of the expression if needed. This will no longer be necessary once the new composer is out of beta. And if you're using the beta version of the composer already, you can do this without having to use arbitrary text, which is really nice. And that's probably the biggest way that we manage these sort of complex conditionals so that we can maintain them and keep them updated. And we also have talked about on our product roadmap the concept of saved expressions, which I don't have a timeline on, but that would really, really help with managing all those complex conditionals and being able to store them in a single place. So stay tuned for more on that.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. And I'm loving the questions that everyone's throwing out. This is really good stuff. So thank you. All right, we have another question here. What's your view to adding states to pages? Is this modular or not? Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of a non-answer that I hate to give, but it really depends on the use case. General idea is if the state is allowing you to reference it from all the various places that value is needed, then absolutely it's modular. Really, the goal is to centralize our logic as much as possible to just make sure that we're not repeating ourselves. And if we need to update something in the app, we can do it in a way that is easy to understand and easy for anyone on our team to update. And so states enable that. Where that gets tricky is if you have two reusables that need to read the same value. That's where right now there's some limitations and you might want to go in a different direction than states if something like that comes up. But in general, absolutely, that can be modular.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. And, okay, we have a version control question here. So how does your team manage when to merge branches to main and then push to production? Maria, how do you guys think about this?
Yeah, this is great. A great question. So let me just start by explaining our branch structure. Within main, we have a branch called staging. And then within staging, we have feature branches. So we have sort of a double layer of protection there. So anytime we do push to live, we're merging a couple times up the chain to get it out. When it does come time to merge something, we'll all give each other a heads up to say, hey, I'm about to merge this thing. Please don't be doing anything in staging or in main, which is kind of the norm. You should really only ever be working in your feature branch. But just kind of as a safety heads up to everybody else, merge it, deploy it, and then kind of unblock deploys from then on out. So we try to keep our deploys as small as possible. We try to keep our feature branches light, and then merge, deploy, and then delete the feature branch right away.
Awesome. That's really helpful. Thanks, Maria. Okay, we're almost at time here. So selfishly, I am going to take the last question. We've heard a lot about some really cool stuff that Bubble has coming up throughout BubbleCon, and would love to know which of the upcoming kind of product updates y'all are most excited about. So yeah, Maria, what are you most excited about?
This one is sort of a small one, but I'm super excited about it. The dynamic breakpoints feature is great. I think it's going to impact our daily lives. It's going to make things more modular, more scalable, and more consistent when it comes to making all of our pages responsive.
Awesome. And what about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I have to go with another small one that I'm totally nerding out about, but returning data from custom events. I cannot wait to get my hands on that, especially in light of everything we talked about. I think it'll be a game changer.
I love it. And last but not least, Sam.
Yeah, so I'll go with a major one. I'm super excited for native mobile apps. As a Bubble developer, like I fell into this product and this career because Bubble gave me the power to build software without necessarily having a computer science background. And true native mobile has always been missing from my skill set as a developer. So Bubble having that capability is going to be a game changer. I think I'm super excited personally to build some native apps, for my own side projects. So really excited for that one.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks again, everyone. Really hope that you all enjoyed this session today. I know we had a lot of fun kind of peeling the layers back and showing you what we're thinking about and doing here at Bubble. That's it for this session, but there's plenty more awesome programming to come, such as growing your business on Bubble. So thank you, everyone, and don't forget to stay dry.